Today I want to share with you how I make really cheap and easy houses using a secret ingredient that's coming up soon. Each of these houses take less than a day to make, and if you're making a bunch of them, it'll be done in no time. Today I'm building this big barn using the same techniques. I start off with the walls. All the walls are made out of double corrugated cardboard that are 2.5 inches tall. This is roughly a good scale for 35mm or 28mm miniatures. I make 2 walls 6 inches and 2 walls 7 inches. This is a very big house. Don't worry about cracks or bends in the exterior wall, because that'll all be covered up with our secret ingredient. I then use hot glue to keep the entire structure held together and line it up with the cutting mat to make sure it's square. Now I'll build a little roof structure to make sure it holds that square or rectangular shape. And in this example, it's 6 by 7 inches, the same size as the walls. I then mark out for the roof how wide it's going to be on one side. It's a little bit more than 6 inches because of the thickness of the cardboard. And then I just cut it down, and this is 2.5 inches tall, which is quite a steep roof. Can't really sit miniatures on it. So if you were looking to do that, you'd want to have a much more shallow roof, like 1 inch or 1.5 inches. But thanks to how triangles and rectangles work, that one rectangle piece gives us 2 sides of a triangle. Now this is really quick and easy. I just glue on some cardstock as the roof and then cut around on the outside. And this will serve as the foundation for our shingles that we'll put on later, or any type of roofing that you want to do to your house. And then glue in that seam to make sure it's nice and tight and it won't go flopping around. Now for our secret ingredient, a jar of sand. This will serve as the nice texture foundation for our medieval walls. Normally you have to use foam to do something like this, but I found with just very fine sand, just take out a pail of sand and sift it a couple of times, you can get a really nice texture that looks like the medieval textured walls. And I just fill up every side that I want with a bunch of sand, and especially in the little crevices of the corrugation of the cardboard, you really want to fill that up to give that a bit more strength and to hold its shape properly. Now the most tedious part of this example is making the shingles for the roof. I just cut roughly 2 centimeter to 1 centimeter strips and then cut that down to the full shingle size. I really like the ramshackled and cartoonish look that multiple different size shingles gives. But if you're a bit more careful and want to have a much more structured layout, you can instead use a paper cutter or come through and mark out each shingle and cut it down. I like to have a little bit of a playable interior to my houses, and the easiest way to do that is just to put it on a piece of single corrugated cardboard and mark out the footprint. We'll come back to this piece later on. And now for the tedious part of laying down all of the shingles. This only takes 20 to 30 minutes if you really get into the groove, and I just put on a podcast or an audiobook and listen to that in the background. I want to roughly be thinking ahead as to how I want it to look in the end, but you can really just go buck wild and go crazy laying all of these shingles down. When you get to the next layer, make sure to space them out so they're covering each other, and that makes it really look like proper actual shingles. And it is super satisfying laying all of this down and getting to the end. It is a great feeling. With both sides done, I then use extra long shingles to make the caps that'll cover this yucky hot glue mess at the top. And then I choose to just slice off all the extra shingles. And here is our final material before painting, coffee stir sticks. I use these to make the wooden frame of the house, and it's very important to cover up those unsightly seams in between the shingles and in between where the walls meet. Here, it's also a good idea to look up medieval houses so you get an idea of what sort of wooden frames and shapes that you want. Now I want a double door on the front, so what I do is use chipboard to just cut out a template that'll be my double door template, and this is 2 inches by 2 inches. Placing the template where I want the door, I can then build the frame around the door, and later on I will build the door and glue it on. And then add some extra struts to give it that barn look that I'm going for. And here, it's really important to cover that ugly corrugation with a coffee stir stick. And that hides that terrible cardboard look and makes it look like a really good house. And now for the double door, I use that template and put it onto some cardstock where I can then glue on my coffee stir sticks to make it look like 2 separate doors. It's really important here to leave a gap between the 2 doors, and that'll do all the work you need to really imply that there are 2 separate doors. And then using cardstock again, I'm just making some banding that will even more exaggerate that this is a door and then this is a door. And I use tacky glue to glue that on just because PVA glue is a bit of a mess. And then cut little squares and glue on a bead to look like a door handle. And that sticks right in the little hole that we made for it. I also use these long beads to look like hinges, and that adds just another level of detail. But it's totally unnecessary, or you can make them out of cardboard. I also want to imply the existence of some windows. These windows will be closed. These are just an inch square, and I do the same that I did with the doors, but instead of using coffee stir sticks, I use matchsticks. Now cover the entire thing in a layer of black Mod Podge that'll seal in the sand, seal in the shingles, and make sure this is a tough cookie. When that's dry, I start painting with a messy cream color. You could really just go crazy because all of the other places are going to be covered up later on. And in this, I'm trying to get some pretty good coverage, but it doesn't matter if you miss a spot here or there. It will just add to the texture and color of the final piece. I like to use burnt sienna for my wood because I really like that orange color, but you could use any sort of color for your wood, and I just go through on all of the wooden pieces and color it that. With this, you have to be a bit more careful and color inside the lines, even if I am going a bit out. You can mess up a bit because with the final brown wash, it'll kind of clear up and hide those mistakes. And then finally the roof. I'm painting this in green, but you can do whatever color of course. And I make sure that I get it really opaque and I come through with 2 layers of paint. And now finally for the wash. Using watered down burnt umber paint, I just lay it on thick and then dab out all the center areas, because water in these houses are usually going to corrugate around the wooden pieces or in the corners and in the hard to reach places. So just get rid of the top layer. and then I dry brush the shingles with a lighter green, making sure to go with the shingles, up and down. And then paint any metallic pieces with a gunmetal grey. You go really crazy with these paint jobs, but I'm just going to keep it simple to show you the technique of building the structure. And now that footprint I spoke about before, I have a bunch of popsicle sticks that I cut to 2 inches long, and I'm just laying them out like wooden flooring. Now this isn't exactly in scale, but it's much faster than doing with coffee stir sticks or carving out of foam. And for me, I can get a pack of like 150 popsicle sticks for $1, so this is really, really cheap. As you can see, after that dried, it has kind of a bend in it. So to flatten that out, I cover the back in PVA glue and then put on top of that a piece of baking paper and then sandwich that in between 2 heavy books. And when that's completely dry, I use black paint to completely cover it, and this will exaggerate the shadows in between each plank of wood. Because we're specifically targeting shadows, it's really important to get inside and in between every plank. Then I pick out each plank with a mixture of white and raw sienna, this light creamy sort of color. And what really makes this work is using a variety of amounts of paint on each plank. So some planks are completely covered and some planks are just a bit lighter. And then while that's still just a little bit wet, I come through with a brighter mix of those 2 colors and paint perpendicular to each plank with a very heavy dry brush. And then we have our fully completed house. But it's missing some furniture. I suppose I'll have to get on top of that then. Thank you for watching, and I hope I inspired you to make some weird and wacky houses of your own with this super cheap method. If you liked this video, then like this video and subscribe to see more.